Greetings and welcome to another episode of Super Speak Sundays. I'm your host, James the Orator. This is a space where we highlight ordinary people who are doing some extraordinary things. We have a really great show for you today. Boy, we were just blown away by what we experienced on our first show. Keith, the RV guy, shut it down. He really has some really good information, and then he has some inspiration for us as well. Hey, you know what? I can't express to you all how happy I am with the feedback, with the emails, the text messages, the comments that we had on Facebook. We asked you to subscribe to our YouTube page. We're just overwhelmed. I promise you, as we continue down this journey, that we will provide you with the best guests that we can find. Each one of our guests have inspirational stories, and it's something that we just want to inspire you to just be great and to be greater and to be your greatest. Today we have a father and daughter duo, and they have just done some amazing things throughout their lives. You know, even though we can be successful in our careers and successful in life, sometimes we have what we call speed bumps that we have to get over. And we all have experienced those speed bumps in life. And this family today, they show so much strength, so much perseverance, so much courage through the challenges that they face. Let me introduce our guest today. James Morehead was introduced to the world of theater at M.H. Carroll High School in Monroe, Louisiana at the age of 14. At Grambling State University, he was awarded Best Actor 3 times and he also won the Outstanding Senior Award in Theater. He is a retired professor of speech and theater at Anderson University in Anderson, Indiana, where he taught thousands of students for over 30 years. He is the pastor of Pasadena Heights Church of God, serving with his wife, Jean Morehead, in Indianapolis, Indiana. His daughter, Andrea Morehead-Allen, is a 7-time Emmy Award-winning journalist and formerly worked as a television news anchor in Indianapolis, Indiana, Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Worcester, Massachusetts. She has covered major events over her 30 years as a journalist, covering major events such as the 2000 Summer Olympics in Sydney, Australia, the 2002 Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City, Utah, and the 2009 inauguration of U.S. President Barack Obama. She is a breast cancer survivor, a wife, a mother of a 14-year-old son named Ian James Allen. She's excited about her new journey as a voice-over talent, television host, public speaker, executive producer, and a children's book author, The Brightest Star. It'll be one of many, ladies and gentlemen. Help me welcome our guests, Mr. James Morehead and Miss Andrea Morehead-Allen.
Hey.
Hey, how's it going? How's it going, everybody?
Good. Hey, Daddy.
Praise God. It's going well.
Good. Hey, we're happy to have you all today. It's such a blessing to be able to just be honored with your presence. You know, I got a chance, and I have to be honest, I haven't read your book, but I got a chance to read the foreword. And I tell you what, I am definitely inspired. But you know what, before we get into the book, as we do traditionally, we always start out with a quote for our guest. And when you see this quote, we'd like you to respond based on your initial reaction.
Okay. Daddy, I'll let you go first.
Here's the quote. It is not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. And that's by Audre Lorde. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I believe that quote is just right on target. I had to learn that. I had to learn a valuable lesson about myself. The lesson was that first and foremost, God does not create junk. And because he does not create junk, each and every person that he creates has a purpose. Many times people don't discover their own purpose, because they're so busy looking at other people who maybe look better, who sound better, who have more money, who live in a better home, who drive a better car. But God has a purpose for each life. And I'm thankful for the life that he has blessed me with.
All right. And how many years is that?
Oh, 75.
75 years. Hey, it's definitely
75 years.
definitely somewhere I want to be. Andrew, what's your reaction to that quote?
Well, I affirm everything my dad just said. And really, when I think about the brightest star, that was the whole purpose for us writing the book, is to speak about differences, that God made us all individually different. I mean, that was purposeful. That was his intention. And if all of us would realize that we have so much more in common than our differences, what a wonderful world we would live in. I mean, this is really a story about humanity. This is about all of us loving each other, but celebrating our differences, because our differences, I can learn something about somebody else because of something, maybe they look differently or they speak differently or whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, our differences should be something that, we should embrace, and we should have compassion and empathy for one another. Because at the end of the day, we're all human beings. At the end of the day, we all bleed the same color blood. At the end of the day, we all want love. At the end of the day, we just want to be accepted for who we are. And I think if all of us would come to the table in our workplaces, in our church environments, in our home environments, if all of us would come to the table understanding that we all have something in common and that we just want to be accepted for who we are, what a better world we would live in. Our children would grow up in a better world. And so that was the purpose of us writing The Brightest Star. And yeah, my father has his own particular experience, but everyone has a story to share about maybe a way in which they've been treated differently, and they want to be seen as who they are, to be accepted for who they are.
Absolutely. I definitely agree. I can remember growing up, and I've probably been about 5'3" since I've been in ninth grade. so I've always been a shorter guy. But you know what? I think a lot of it had to do with the way that my parents raised me, and what they told me on a regular basis, that I am somebody, and I can, and no matter how tall I am, I mean, I can be great. And to this day, I mean, I still believe that. I want to go back, James, as people watch the screen today, they see something that might be different in you in terms of your color and things of that nature, and it's because you have, well, it's not a bad thing, but it's albinism is what you have, and there are many people who experience albinism in their lives. Can you talk a little bit about the history of albinism and how, I mean, kind of give people some information about what albinism is?
Albinism is a disorder, if you will. I won't say it's a disease, because it's not. It's a disorder where the gene that has to regulate color, lanolin in the body, melanin, in the body, did not appear in my genes. And so as a result, I was born without pigmentation, or without very little pigmentation. But I'm blessed because there are some American albinos, as well as albinos in other countries, that have far less pigmentation than I do. And as a result, their what's the word I want to use? Their skin color is white, almost like a sheet.
Right.
There's less pigmentation in the eyes for the most part, but some have more pigmentation in the eyes than others. There's less pigmentation in the hair, but some have more pigmentation than others. When I was much younger, my hair was blonde and my beard was blonde. But as I've gotten older, if I grow a beard, it's solid white, and my hair is solid white. So there was some pigmentation in my skin, but people looked at me and they didn't know what I was, whether I was black or white, without understanding that this disorder, biological disorder, does not make me any less than anyone else.
Talk about, I know you grew up in Anderson, Indiana, and I could imagine when you grew up that the population of minority or black folks was probably not that great. And so let's go back to your childhood Talk about when you first identified that you were different from others.
Well, I didn't grow up in Anderson. I came to Anderson 32 years ago. I grew up in Monroe, Louisiana.
That's right.
And
That's
at the
right. I
time,
did read that,
Louisiana,
didn't I?
that's all right. At that time, Louisiana, as many of the southern states were, very segregated. And so people didn't know what I was. But the first time I came into the realization of who I was and who I was not was when I was 4 years old. I lived with my great uncle and aunt, my mother and I. I was born out of wedlock. And I'm not ashamed to say that because it has been something that has helped me to move forward and not be used as an excuse. So I never knew my biological father. But I remember at 4 years old, I was standing on a coat case in the bathroom as my great uncle shaved. And I looked at him and I looked at me in the mirror. And I said to him, Pop, how come I don't look like you and Mama and Ava Lee?
Right.
Ava Lee was my mother's name. She's deceased now. He said something that has stuck in my heart, mind, and spirit all these years. I created you. And I'm sorry, he said, you are special. That's why God created you the way you are. And so I have remembered that. And so when people have asked me, for instance, when I was in college and I was dating my wife, Jean, they would say, how come you, of all people, could have such a beautiful girlfriend? And I would say to them, because I'm special.
That's right.
So
That's
that
right.
has been my lineage, my legend.
You know, James, when you in the book, you talk about having to have perseverance, having to have a spirit of willingness to not give up. You know, I could imagine when you were growing up in school, other children were probably not nice to you. Talk a little bit about how you
Nice.
how your self-esteem may have been impacted and some things that you did to repair that.
Well, first and foremost, you're absolutely right. I was bullied. We didn't use the word bullied. It was called making fun of. And people referred to me as that real bright boy when I was growing up. But when I was in grade school, I remember the first day I went to school, it was a horrendous experience. I was laughed at. Kids poked fun at me. They even poked their finger at me, trying to figure out who I was. I was a novelty. And I didn't live too far from the school, so I ran home. My mother sent me back to school. That was the beginning of the perseverance, that in spite of what I had to go through, I knew I had to be there because being at home was not the best place to be when you're supposed to be in school.
Right.
So I discovered that kids are going to laugh at me. They're going to poke fun at me. They're going to say things about me. And a lot of it out of just sheer ignorance, the lack of knowledge as to who I was. I didn't see anyone else in my town that looked like me. There may have been other people, but I never saw them because I really didn't leave my neighborhood because I didn't want to be seen by people. And it's so ironic that I talk about not wanting to be seen. And God put something in my life and in my spirit, and that was a talent for performing. And when I performed in front of people, after I had gotten over this thing of not wanting to be in front of people, I discovered that put a little makeup on me, put a wig on me, and I could do what I wanted to do. And I found myself through the theater.
All right. Well, it sounds like theater was a huge part of your coming out of your shell of having this this disorder. You know, Andrea, you were a little girl. Now, did you grow up in Louisiana as well, or Anderson?
Yeah, I did. I was actually born in Oklahoma City,
Okay.
and I was there until the fourth grade. And fifth, sixth, and seventh grade, we moved to Grambling State University, or Grambling, Louisiana, where my mom and dad served on staff there, their alma
Okay.
mater. And then we moved to Texas for a couple of years, and then finally to Anderson, Indiana, back in 1984.
Okay. Talk. You know, I know that as a little girl, there were some things that you noticed about your dad. I mean, when did you first discover that your dad was different from others?
Well, you always know it because he didn't look like us.
Mhm.
But growing up as a child, I just thought he was just a white man,
Okay.
because has the color and the skin of a Caucasian. And it didn't hit me until maybe I guess it was about 7th or 8th grade, and my mom explained to my sister and I that daddy is actually white. And it came up because I was at school and some kids, my dad came to pick me up from school one evening, and some kids were kind of teasing me that my father was white.
Mhm.
And remember, this was during a time back in, the late 70s, early 80s, where there weren't a lot of interracial couples. So seeing a white man with a black woman was, not necessarily unheard of, but it was rare. And I went and, asked my mom, and that's when she explained to us that, daddy is really a black man. He just
Mhm.
doesn't have melanin in his skin. And that was it. It just was a quick conversation, and, life went on, and I went and did my homework or played or whatever. So
Right.
it wasn't a big deal. It never was really discussed in our family because it just wasn't a big deal. He was my father, and he's a black man who just doesn't have melanin. And that's the end of the story. But he was still my dad who loved us, took care of us, and
Sure.
provided for the family. And at the end of the day, my sister and I, we want love. Every child wants love, and that's what we got. We got mad love from my mom and dad. But I think
Absolutely.
growing up, it really gave me the ability to have empathy for people,
Mhm.
be compassionate for people, to understand other people who may have disabilities, and to not see people differently. I mean, acknowledge their difference, but to find beauty in
Sure.
everything and in everybody. And so that really helped me to be the person that I am today, is that, I have such compassion for anyone and everyone because, you know, we're all, we're all in different stages in our lives, and
Sure.
having gone through and still, living through this experience, it just helps me to have a bigger heart for people, which is what I
Sure.
try to espouse to, my own son, daddy's grandson, who's named after my dad. It has his middle name. And
Sure.
so, yeah, even my son thought, well, isn't Pop Pop white? And so we had to explain to him when he got a little older to understand what that looks like. And that, no, he looks like he's white, but he's actually really black. He is a black man through and through. And
That's it.
so to explain that, we're like, okay, here's an example. He went to Grambling State University, and daddy's is a Q, and he's a black man. He just has a different color. And when you think about it, the black race, the African American, there are so many of us who are different shades. And so
Sure.
daddy is just a different shade of black, just a different shade. There's brown, there's really light skin, there's dark. It doesn't matter. He's still a black man. He's just a lighter shade of black.
Absolutely. Uh-oh,
Yeah.
we have somebody calling in for a question. Hey, James, you as you grew up, you knew what it felt like to be mistreated by others. What message did you have for your daughters as they were growing up?
I told them to love people for who they are,
Mhm.
not to alienate or isolate themselves because of how a person looked. I'll tell you what really, really brought it home for me was when I attended Grambling State University. It was called Grambling College at the time.
Okay.
And the president had a motto that is still being used there, and we even use it in our church, that everybody is somebody.
That's it.
And we add everybody is God's body. And I wanted even my congregation to come to realize that we accept all people, regardless of race, creed, or color. When you've gone through the storm, you can
Yeah.
certainly tell others about the storm, what the storm is like. But you can also tell them that you can survive. And
Yes.
that is what it happened to me. I was able to survive storms in my life. The other thing is when I went to Grambling State, left Monroe, Louisiana, and I'd never been out of Monroe until I went to Grambling. And Grambling was like 36 miles away from Monroe. When I went to Grambling, I discovered that there were students on campus that were just as white or whiter than I was. They were
Right.
called mulattoes and octoroons. They looked white, and they could have very easily passed for white. So I blended in somewhat, and that was a great help. And I think this is why African Americans need to see people, even in colleges, they need to see people that look like them, because in a
Right.
lot of instances, we're the only ones there. When I came to Anderson University as a college professor, they didn't know whether I was black or white. And I had to constantly tell my students in class, I am an African American. And I don't ever want you to forget that. I'm proud of my heritage. I'm
Right.
proud of who God created me to be. And I want you to know that here at this institution, one of the things that you need to learn is to get to know people, not because of the color of their skin, but because of the content of their character.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, it sounds like you had a great influence on your daughters. I mean, the messages that you gave them seems like it's been with them for many, many years. They're fighters and they're strong. Andrew, you over the last few years, you experienced a scare with breast cancer,
Mhm.
and so can you talk a little bit about, as your dad expresses the messages that he gave you as a child, how were you able to draw on the strength that he gave as a father as you went through that difficult time?
When I think about my dad's life, his life has always been about perseverance. It's been about standing out in a crowd. It's been about pushing through obstacles. It's been about climbing over mountains. It's been about faith in God and believing that God hears your cries, sees your tears, and He's the one through faith who can lift you out of those moments and feelings of despair. And that's exactly what I felt when I was going through breast cancer. I mean, I remember the day that, we had just come back my husband and I, from a trip in Florida.
Mhm.
And I went back on a Saturday morning. I emceed an event that was supporting breast cancer patients that Saturday night. And that Sunday evening, I felt a lump and I felt different. I knew something was different. And I called the doctor on Monday. They couldn't get me in. And at the last minute on Wednesday, I woke up and God told me to call to see if I could get in that day. And
Sure.
so be it. It just happened that somebody had canceled. And they said, if you can be here by 10 o'clock, we can get you in. Or I would have had to wait another 2 or 3 weeks.
Mhm.
And so, literally, with my pajamas on, practically, my husband and I went and we got the mammogram. And then a day later is when they, told me that I had breast cancer. And so, in that moment, my only thought was, what about my family? What about my
Mhm.
husband? What's going to
Yeah.
happen to my son? And as mothers, you go into that moment of, okay, let me get things in place, because I didn't know if it was what stage I was yet. I
Sure.
just assumed that it was like stage 4. And I went into action mentally thinking, what do I need to do to prepare to get my family
Sure.
together? And the very first thing we did after, I will never forget, my husband and I were sitting on the sofa when we got the phone call and they told me that I had breast cancer. We just got off the phone and we started to pray.
Oh yeah.
So when I think about my father's life, faith has sustained him, prayers have sustained him. And here
Yeah.
he is now, all of these years, becoming, a pastor. As he said, the person who never wanted to stand in front of people was
Right.
an actor. The person who didn't want to stand in front of people became a college professor. The person who did not want to be looked at was standing in front of crowds, speaking at conferences and conventions, and pastor of a church. So his life is the epitome of overcoming. His
Yes.
life is the epitome of a mountain and overcoming it, going over the mountain and succeeding in life in spite of. And so the breast cancer was my mountain. The breast cancer was that obstacle. The breast cancer was that challenge that I said, no matter what, I'm going to fight, and fight I did. And so I'm thankful that here I am. I was diagnosed on April 19th, 2018, and here I am almost 3 years later. Thank God I'm still cancer free.
Yeah.
However, I go to the doctor every 6 months to make sure that I'm still in remission. And I'm just grateful. I'm thankful. There's not a day that I don't go through where I don't wake up and just say, Lord, thank you for allowing
Yeah.
me to wake up this morning. Thank you for
Right.
another day. And there's not a moment that goes by when I am not living in the moment.
That's
Um,
it.
you know, a challenge like health, any challenge will make you understand how important, not only how important life is, but how do we spend our time?
That's
Because
it.
our time is not, we don't know the time. And the word says this: you don't know the time nor the day, and we don't know when our
Right.
last moment will be. So I have come with this new spirit of perseverance, a new spirit of resiliency, a new spirit of, I don't have time for the mess, a new spirit of, how do I really want to feed my soul? The new spirit of, how do I spend my time? Do I spend it with the right people? How do I spend my work time? And so having gone through that allowed me to really reassess people, events, experiences, employment, all of that.
Sure.
I can live the best life possible. So that, and having faith in spite of all of, life's drama, and saying, Lord, I trust you that you want to take care of us. And he always has and always will. And I'm continuing to live and walk in not one purpose, but several purposes that I know he has in your life. Just like he had for my dad's life. He says he was unique and God created all of us. And he had a certain purpose and a plan. We're living that plan. And I'm just so thankful that, I believe Daddy's story is like 75 years in the making, 52 years for me. Being able to tell the story of resiliency and perseverance and anti-bullying and kindness and compassion and love. Yes. And that's what life is about for my family. That's who we are and what we want to represent. And we hope that the book will help encourage that for young kids and really for all people of all ages. We've had so many people who have emailed us and have written on Facebook saying, you know what, my grandkids love this book and they want to read it every.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I think
I didn't really know what this book was, but I'm so thankful because I've learned something, and it's allowed me to feel more compassionate and to have more empathy for people. And so that's the message. That's our purpose in life, and I believe that's what God wants all of us to be: is to be, caretakers of each other, to love each other, and to be kind.
Absolutely, James. You should.
If I could.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead, James.
It would behoove me, and I would certainly be remiss if I didn't say that God placed a beautiful woman in my life who, to some extent, has been like my guardian angel. So much that she has taught me, so much that she has instilled in me. She always encourages me. Even now, there are times when there's something I feel like I can't do. She's there to say, you can do this, and I'm here to help you. One of the things about albinism is most albinos have a visual impairment, and it's because of the light. Our eyes don't have color in them, limited color, and so we don't see as well as we should. I had a difficulty, and some would have said that I have a learning disability. I didn't have a learning disability. I had a disability as it related to a physical condition. Sure. But my wife has done so much to encourage me. And she used to say to me early on in our marriage, God created you, and you don't know the person you can become if you'd only let him into your life. Because I was not a Christian when we got married. But I have to give her credit, because so much of who I've become, so much who our two daughters have become, it was not just me, it was her. And it was me working through her. So I praise God for her this morning and forever, never, as long as I'm on the face of this earth. I didn't do that, but I just had to, because very little is said about her in the book. There are pictures of her in the book. And one picture is so beautiful because she's looking up at me as if to say, I really admire you. And that has been a blessing to me, because I know she's in my corner.
Yes. Yeah, there's a line in the book where we talk about Mom, and you're right, Daddy. There's a shot of, we talk about the two of them meeting in Grambling, meeting in theater class, and that my mother was the one who always stood for right.
Okay.
And that's what life is all about. That's what we believe. It's about standing for right, standing for truth, standing for justice, standing for, humanity. And so, my mother, as Daddy said, I would be remiss if I didn't say the same thing. I mean, she has been the family cheerleader. She has been the one on the sidelines, maybe not getting the star or getting, the light shine or shone on her. But the fact of the matter is, none of us would be who we are without my mom. She has been such a phenomenal support system and the biggest cheerleader. I mean, when I was in television, I would speak to my mother every single night leaving home. I would work late at night, get home, leaving about 11:45, 12 midnight. And every single night we would talk on the way home after my broadcast, because she wanted to say, "Hey, you look great tonight," or "Oh, that
Oh
was a
yeah.
great story,"
Yeah.
or just to make sure that I got home safe. And
Right.
so, we missed those 12 midnight, those midnight calls. We haven't done that in the last couple of years, but it just goes to show you, the kind of love and support they have always been. Um, they've always been in our corner for anything and everything that we've wanted to do in our lives. They've always said, "You can do it, you can make it." And so, yeah, we wouldn't be who we are without my mommy.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, you all are a phenomenal family. It's just a pleasure to be able to see a dad and his crown jewel, his daughter, to
Oh,
be together, just to kind of talk about the challenges that you faced in life, and so many people have faced challenges but don't have the support systems, and it's quite evident that
Right.
you all have supported one another. No matter the situation, you all have been there for one
mm,
another. As you and Andrew, I'm going to give you an opportunity, and also you, James. But Andrew, we in terms of perseverance, young women who might be experiencing or may experience breast cancer or any challenge that they're facing in life, what words of encouragement do you have for them?
the first word, honestly, that comes to mind is just faith. And I talked about this a little earlier. Everything that I have done and accomplished in my life has been because of my faith,
Sure.
my Christian walk with God, and knowing that, even a health challenge will be your footstool. Your enemies, the word says, your enemies will be your footstools. And so I look at my life as representative of that. No, everything doesn't go perfectly as planned. People see us on television, they think we've got the perfect life.
Right.
Life happens, things happen.
Sure.
But my faith has always been the overriding, the number one, thing that has helped me get through anything and everything in life. And so my word to women who get breast cancer is, you're that chick who ain't afraid. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid
Mhm.
of anything. You're that chick through God who can persevere. You're that chick through God who is going to help you to push through and overcome the challenge. And use that time, because you obviously have a lot of time for reflection when you're going through chemotherapy. I went through 20, about 4 months of chemotherapy, 20 different treatments before I finally had surgery. And then I had 5 weeks of radiation after that. But you have a lot of time to reflect. You have a lot of time to sit in the bed, lay in the bed, and think about things that you want to do in life, things that you want to accomplish, missteps that you've made in life, asking for forgiveness, praying for God to use this to help you have a different vision about how you want to be used. And so, again, my advice is to use that time to really get to know yourself again, relearn yourself, have new goals, because you will have new goals. I believe that God is allows that to happen, or uses those health challenges to create a new reality for ourselves. And once you come through it, you see life just totally differently.
Sure.
And it's just so much better. I have so much more peace now about things and issues and people and drama and all of that, that I never would have had I not gone through this challenge.
Sure.
It just really
Sure.
opens your eyes up. And so, yes, it's a devastating diagnosis. It hurts. And not a but, because the but means that you are negating what I just said. I'm saying
Mhm.
that, and you can survive. You will survive.
Thank you, James. There's a young man. There's a
So,
young lady who's watching this broadcast, and they experience albinism. What word do you have for them? They're being teased. They're being, um, they're the butt of all the jokes in school. What words do you have for these young people as they, progress through this experience?
the first thing that I would say is to find value in yourself. If we have the time, I live by stories. I used to teach by illustrations and stories. When we lived in Oklahoma City, we had some. We were given a beautiful collie puppy, and as she matured, one day we put her outside and she left home. Well, we discovered her 3, 4 days later. She came back and she was worse for wear, but she was pregnant after we took her to the doctor and had her checked out. Well, when the puppies were born and we had them all treated, I put an ad in the newspaper that's puppies free of charge. Come and get them. One and a mother full-bred collie, father stranger in the night. No one came. A few days later, I was talking to a friend and she said, listen, people are concerned about things that are free. So why don't you do this? Put another ad in the paper, and if you don't sell them, I'll pay for the ad. I put another ad in the paper and I said, puppies, $5 a piece. Mother full-bred collie, father stranger in the night, come and get them. In less than 3 hours, we had sold all those puppies. It's the value. And that's what I would tell young people. It's the value you place on yourself. Another example, if I can quickly say, when I came home from the opening night of the first play that I was in when I was in 9th grade, my mother was waiting in the house, in the living room in the dark. And when I turned the lights on, there she was. And she said, James, come here. I went over to her and she said, honey, did the people laugh? Did the children and people laugh at you tonight? I said, yes, Mama, they laughed, but they had to pay for the opportunity to do so.
Right.
The other thing about perseverance that I learned from my wife, she used to tell me that her grandfather used to say, honey, you've got to learn to persevere. And I learned to persevere by watching her persevere with me as a husband. So I would say to young people, especially those who have albinism, don't be ashamed to be in the shadows. You were not created to be in the dark. You were created to be in the light. And people used to refer to me as that real bright boy. So yes, I'm real bright because God has brought me to the light, and I have the light of his love in my life.
Amen. That's it. Hey, the Brightest Star. The book is called The Brightest Star, ladies and gentlemen. You can find that book on Amazon. Is that right?
Amazon, Walmart online, Barnes and Noble. Yeah.
And the book is not just for children. Anybody can benefit from The Brightest Star. And so we want to encourage our listeners to go out, get this book. You won't, again, I was just excited reading the forward of the book, and then the what's the Lindsay Davis's? Let me see. I think I have Lindsay Davis has done something.
Lindsay Davis, personal friend of mine. I know many of you all who are watching know that she's working in Indianapolis as one of the anchors, local anchors there on the weekend, and she is now doing phenomenal. She's so successful working for ABC News, the network in New York City, and she is their Sunday weekend anchor, and she does a lot of phenomenal reports and stories. And she and I are friends, and she knows my mom and dad. Used to attend our church when she attended Indianapolis when she was in Indy. And so we reached out to her and said, hey, would you be willing to write the back blurb? And she said, absolutely. And then some people may be surprised. Inside of the book, the foreword was written by Marvin Jones III. A lot of people are fans of the TV show Black Lightning that used to air on the CW for about, I think, 4 seasons or so. They just went off the air earlier this year. But he's one of the most recognizable actors who just happens to be an albino. And so I reached out to him and his people, and he said he would love to be part of the project. So he wrote the foreword. And he has his own story to tell, very much like my dad's. And so it's been wonderful working with him to share the message that, love who you are, self-worth and value. It starts with self-esteem. And no matter whatever your dreams are in life, you want to be an actor, be that actor. You want to be that scientist, be the scientist. Don't ever let anything hold you back from succeeding in life. And so while most people have thought about albinism from, there's a stigma attached to it, or, you see it in movies or television shows, and there are people who are making fun of albinism. He's one of those actors, including my dad, who says, we're not to be made fun of. We're beautifully created, and we have talent and skills, and get to know us for who we are. That's what's most important in life.
Absolutely.
And so he wrote the foreword for us. And so he's been a wonderful partner in this venture, getting the word out about albinism, but also for everybody, whatever it is, whatever your difference is, to love yourself, to honor thyself, and to continue to persevere no matter what, regardless of the obstacles, regardless of the mountains. You can make it, you can succeed, and you can overcome.
That's it. But you know what? We again, thank you to you two for really taking the time out today to be a part of Super Speak Sundays. this is this is a true blessing to have you both here, just to share your stories of perseverance, and I know our listening audience are going to be just blown away by the stories and the opportunities just to hear this what you've gone through as a family, and we're hoping that these stories will strengthen families across this world, because families do need to be healed. And so they definitely have an example right here. Again, we want to thank you for being here, and we're gonna close you out. Oh, real quick, Andrea, just so people will know, Clover Lane Media, can you just a very quick plug on Cloverleaf? What do you do? I mean, what is this all about?
Yeah, kind of in your introduction where you talked about all of the things that I'm doing now. My husband and I started Cloverleaf Media a number of years ago. It's been about 12 years ago, and we wanted to tell stories that truly represent the African American experience. On television, you only see kind of like stereotypical roles of us, and we wanted to provide content that would inspire, educate, inform, and motivate people. And so my company, we were nominated for an Emmy for the Trailblazers, Indiana Trailblazers. It was a 3-part documentary that aired on WFYI a number of years ago. Nice. We actually had one of the last interviews with the late John Lewis, when he had never been back to Indianapolis since that night, that fateful night when he and Kennedy were in Indianapolis, and they made the announcement to the crowd that Martin Luther King had been shot. Sure. And so he provided one of the last interviews for us as part of the documentary. And so we're grateful to have been part of that history-making moment personally, but to really, as I said earlier, just to educate people about our history, about things that we do that sometimes people don't think that Black people do, that might be unconventional, like your brother who was, the owner of an RV. Just now, companies and corporations are beginning to take notice that African Americans love RVing. We love camping. But on television, you don't see us in those kinds of moments in life. And so we want people to know through Clover Lane Media, through our publishing arm of the company, through our documentary arm of the company, which we're working on right now, a social justice documentary that we hope will be coming out in the next year or so. We're talking to some companies like Netflix and Showtime and so on and so forth to try to hopefully get that on air. So yeah, we're involved in making sure that we're displaying the best of who we are as African Americans across this nation and across this world. So yeah, our website is cloverlanemedia.com. We do it all. We do it all, including now publishing our first children's book, and one of many more to come.
Well, that's great. Well, we're looking for some great things from you all. Again, thank you for joining us. We're going to have you sign off, and then we're going to do the extra. Again, thank you for coming today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard from Mr. James Morehead and Miss Andrea Morehead-Allen. They've opened their hearts up to talk about things like perseverance, never giving up. We all face challenges in life, but how do we deal with them? Do we sweep it under the rug? Or do we really share our stories so other people can be healed from our shortcomings? This has been Super Speak Sundays with your host, James the Orator. We're signing off. We'll see you next time. Peace.